The King, the Princess, and the Tinker by Ellen Kindt McKenzie and illustrated by William Lowe. Chapter 9. Who is the King? "Don't be silly, you will do no such thing," said the general primly as he stared at the unkempt beard. "Why not?" shouted King John in an even greater tone of fury. "Because we don't know that we have abandoned the king," the general sniffed. "What do you mean?" King John thrust out his underlip and glowered at the general. "Why," said the general, "we have with us someone who calls himself Jack, which is another name for John. He bears the Princess Sweet Rosilla on his shoulder and wears the king's crown. Though he denies that he is the king, we have no proof that he is not. As for you, I don't remember ever seeing you. Who knows who you are?" King put his hands to his head and found that his crown was gone. "I will show you who is king," he shouted. "Give me my crown." "Ah," said the general, "but we do not know that it is your crown." King John turned first pale, then purple with passion. "I am the king because I say that I am the king," shouted the king. "Who dares say that I am not the king?" "No one dares say that you are not the king," said Jack thoughtfully. "But though I dare say that I am not the king, yet I dare not say that you are the king. There may be some different person altogether who is the king." The puzzle was now so great that neither the king nor the general, nor even Jack, knew what to do. Princess Sweet Rosilla was no more help than the least of the 5,000-foot soldiers, for snuggling against Jack's neck, she slept soundly, her hair falling over his shoulder. King John's mouth turned down when he saw how sweetly the princess slept on the shoulder of the tinker, instead of on that of her own dear father. All at once he remembered how soft and comforting her hair had been, and he wished that he might pat it once more. But the general glared so fiercely at him that he dared not touch it. King John's eyes were now so wide open that they began to sting. At last Jack said, "Let us go to the royal castle. Surely someone there will know who is the king." The general was so fearful of making a mistake that he would let neither the king nor Jack ride in the royal coach. Instead, they put the sleeping princess upon its soft cushions and turned back toward the castle. King John found himself walking in the dust behind the royal coach. Jack walked beside him, and for a time neither knew what to say. After a bit, Jack took his hat from his head. "Wearing this crown is giving me a headache," he said. He took the crown from his hat and set the hat back in place. Then he examined the jeweled crown, turning it around in his hands. "At first I thought it was a burned pot, and had no idea why it was decorated with all these bits of colored glass. I could see what a fine piece of metal it is. Somehow, it didn't seem right to use such a pretty thing for cooking a stew." "It is a beautiful crown," King John sniffed. Jack cocked his head at the crown and then looked off at the countryside. "It is a beautiful world," he said, tucking the crown under his arm. He'd recovered his breath, and now that they were not marching the double-double quick, he could enjoy the view once again. In fact, anyone can see that the world is more beautiful than even this crown. The blue sky, the green grass, the red poppies, the yellow buttercups, all are brighter than these dusty beads. And, when you see the dew on the blades of the grass in the morning, or the drops of clear water on the leaves of the trees after a rain, you really see a sparkle. The beads in this crown gleam no more brightly than they, nor does the yellow of this crown glow as golden as the sunrise. And a rainbow," he waved his arm. "Oh, there is nothing sweeter to the eye. It is finer even than a polished pot. All of it is just for having, by the looking." King John opened his eyes wider to see what Jack said, if what Jack said was so. "Not only that, but looking is lighter than air," Jack went. "Not heavy as this crown is. If I didn't know what it was, I might leave it by the roadside as I did my pretty pebbles." King John's underlip crept out again. He wanted to pout, but he couldn't remember to keep at it, for he could not keep from looking at the world. He walked and looked and looked and walked. How much he had never seen of the countryside! How far into it he could see, and how different one view was from another. How unlike his mirrored room, where, no matter how far the reflections went, they always showed him the same view over and over. King John's eyes opened wider. His insides turned and churned at the wideness of the view. But by the time the long procession reached the castle, King John's insides were so tired from turning, and his eyes so tired from looking, and his feet so tired of walking, that he wanted to sit down on the steps and cry. Even though she had slept all the way home, Princess Sweet Rosilla was still so sleepy she did not notice that her own kind governess scolded her for being naughty and running off where no one can find her. She was whisked off to bed at once so that she might finish her nap before they celebrated her birthday. Then a great convocation was arranged in the council chambers. The prime minister, the 2 secondary prime ministers, the 3 tertiary prime ministers, and all 17 other high officials, as well as the 6 princes, the general, and Jack, were there. And of course, John. All the ministers and all the high officials and all the 6 princes had the same question. But none had an answer. Even the oldest of the ministers shook his head and murmured, "It has been so long since I saw the king that I am not sure what he looked like. And if it is Jack, he has a kindly face, but seems to know little beyond mending pots. As for John, if he is the king, he is greatly changed. For I do know he was never the squint, wrinkled, long-bearded fellow that this one is." "Which of them is king?" everyone asked. That's the end of chapter 9.